In the late 19th century, William Henry Quilliam was a respected solicitor living in Liverpool, one of the most influential and bustling cities in the British Empire. He was a man of status and intellect, born into a devout Methodist family. His life, up to that point, was typical of a successful Englishman, rooted in Christian tradition, committed to his profession, and firmly embedded in the social order of Victorian Britain. But in 1887, something happened that would change everything. Quilliam took a trip across the Mediterranean Sea, a journey that was supposed to be restorative for his health. During this voyage, he witnessed a sight that left a profound mark on him: a group of Moroccan Muslims, quietly and devoutly performing their daily prayers on the deck of the ship. The sea was rough, the wind fierce, and the ship rocked with each wave. Yet these men remained calm and composed, bowing and prostrating in perfect focus and serenity. They were not disturbed in the least by the howling wind or the swaying of the vessel, Quilliam later recalled. I was deeply moved as I watched the expressions on their faces, expressions of absolute faith and sincerity. This moment would become the spiritual spark that lit a fire within him. What kind of belief system could create such peace, such certainty, even amid the chaos of the sea? Once ashore in Tangier, Morocco, Quilliam's curiosity turned into a deep intellectual and spiritual investigation. He began reading about Islam, engaging in conversations with local Muslims, and absorbing everything he could about the faith that had so mesmerized him on the ship. It was not a decision he took lightly. Islam, at that time, was viewed by most Britons as foreign, even threatening. But Quilliam was a thinker, a rationalist, and the more he learned, the more he realized that Islam was not only logical, it was spiritually fulfilling. At the age of 31, Quilliam embraced Islam and adopted the name Abdullah. His conversion wasn't symbolic. It was total. He found in Islam a moral clarity, a code of life, and a purpose that resonated with both his heart and his mind. But the real challenge began when he returned to England. In Liverpool, Quilliam didn't keep his new faith private. Quite the opposite. He publicly declared himself a Muslim at a time when Islam was virtually unknown and often misunderstood in Britain. Rather than isolate himself, he decided to act. He began writing articles and giving talks explaining Islamic principles. He translated texts, answered questions, and addressed public misconceptions with patience and eloquence. That same year, 1887, he founded Britain's first functioning mosque in a small building at 8 Brougham Terrace, just a short walk from the city centre. It became not only a place of prayer, but a center for Islamic learning, publishing, and community engagement. Through his outreach, it's believed that over 600 people across the UK embraced Islam, many of them through direct contact with Quilliam or by reading his writings. He established the Liverpool Muslim Institute, which offered daily prayers, educational programs, lectures, and even a small orphanage. It became a pioneering center for British Islam. One of his most famous contributions was a short book he authored titled The Faith of Islam. It was a clear, accessible explanation of the religion aimed at English readers. It was so compelling that Queen Victoria herself requested a copy. She was so intrigued by the content that she ordered 6 additional copies for members of the royal family. The booklet was eventually translated into 13 languages, helping introduce Islam to an even wider audience. Quilliam's influence was growing, not just among curious Britons, but also among Muslim leaders abroad. In 1894, the Ottoman Sultan officially granted him the title Sheikh al-Islam of the British Isles. This title, approved by Queen Victoria herself, symbolized his recognized role as a leader of the Muslim minority in Britain. But even with this recognition, Quilliam's mission was not easy. Muslims in Liverpool, many of them converts, faced harassment, ridicule, and even physical assaults. Bricks were thrown at them. They were spat upon. Some had animal waste and fertilizer dumped on their doorsteps. Islam was not protected by public opinion. It was foreign, suspect, and misunderstood. The British media frequently portrayed it as a religion of violence or backwardness, and Quilliam was often caricatured in the press. Still, he never backed down. He believed deeply that the hatred and violence were the result of ignorance and media brainwashing. He continued preaching, publishing, and defending the truth as he saw it. Beyond religious leadership, Quilliam was also a champion of social justice. He used his legal background to support working-class communities, advocated for labor unions, and called for reform in divorce laws, especially in favor of women's rights, a radical stance at the time. But it was his work in family law that would eventually lead to his downfall. In an attempt to help a female client escape an abusive marriage, Quilliam participated in a common Victorian legal practice, trying to trap the husband into committing adultery to provide legal grounds for divorce. The plan failed. The scandal that followed cost Quilliam his legal license and cast a shadow over his reputation. To protect the Muslim community from further backlash, he left Liverpool in 1908, quietly and with dignity. He reappeared sometime later in southern England under a new name, Henry de Leon. Though many knew who he really was, he kept a low profile. Despite the controversy, Quilliam remained committed to his faith. He continued to support Muslim causes and even helped establish Britain's second oldest mosque in Woking, Surrey. In 1932, Abdullah Quilliam passed away in relative obscurity. He was buried in Surrey, far from the mosque he had founded and from the city where his journey had begun. But time has a way of restoring truth. Today, the mosque in Liverpool, the very first in Britain, still stands, and it proudly bears the name Abdullah Quilliam. His story, once nearly forgotten, is now being rediscovered as an essential part of British religious history. Quilliam's life was a story of transformation, courage, and conviction, a man who saw faith not as a private matter, but as a force for justice, unity, and understanding. He stood alone, but he stood firm. And because of him, the roots of Islam in Britain were planted, not by immigrants or armies, but by a man who saw truth on the deck of a ship and followed it wherever it would lead.